So in the gameplay you're seeing, I just shuffled it, and it landed on the Pelicans, which actually makes sense for the sake of this video, through cosmic forces, I guess. Because Anthony Davis is potentially one of the 5 best players in the league this season. I'll talk about it. And I guess I could have waited another 15 games or so, or just when the regular season ended to do this video, but I felt like just kind of doing it now. And we'll talk about the top 5, and I'll probably end up bleeding into the top 10 with, the best players of this season. And I guess you start with LeBron James at number 1, who I do still have at number 1. LeBron's weird because this regular season, I think James Harden has been the best player in the league. And then last regular season, Russell Westbrook was the best player in the league. And then the year before that, in the regular season, Steph Curry was the best player. But in each of those examples, when you get to the postseason, I think LeBron becomes the best player. I mean, he was maybe on the same level as Kevin Durant in these previous finals. His degree of difficulty was higher because of his teammates and the team he was facing. And then the NBA finals before that, the two of them, he was the best player. So for those reasons, I still have LeBron number 1. I mean, from a regular season standpoint, game in and game out, okay, I think it's fair to say that he's not the best player every single night. But, I would say being able to dominate and just flip the switch to go to a level that no one else can get to in the postseason is more valuable than being the first or third best player, on a Wednesday night against the Bucks or something. You know what I mean? So I would have LeBron number 1. Number 2, I'm going to go Kevin Durant. I think with KD, 1, his finals performance was just nuts, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But if we do him versus Harden and Curry, I think James Harden's falters in the postseason, mainly the one against San Antonio, the game 6, I believe it was game 6 or game 7, I don't remember exactly, but the game in Houston without Kawhi Leonard where they just got destroyed, it's kind of tough to see that and then see what Durant did in the finals and say that Harden is above KD. Now, is Harden a better player this regular season? Yes, he is. Definitely. And he's a much better playmaker than Kevin Durant is. But I think Durant has him when it comes to defense, where, to be honest, I do think Durant's defense has been a little overrated this season, and I actually think Harden's defense has been a little underrated because Harden's actually one of the best post defenders in the league just because he's a strong dude who's like 6'5". But I still think Durant's a better defender just because of his length, and Durant's also one of the only guys in the league who can actually defend LeBron somewhat. And I think Harden is still very vulnerable defending isolations, and if he just has to defend in space and go side to side, I think you can get by him. Not like super easily, but you shouldn't have too much difficulty with it. And I also think, for as exceptional as James Harden has been as an isolation player this year, I mean, of course, he's maybe the best in the league at beating defenders in one-on-one situations, especially when you consider his step back and how often he can draw contact and all that. I do think Durant's ability to be an isolation player, on top of, because he's so tall, he can just shoot over anybody, combined with, even though he's not a great off-ball player, he's a pretty good one, and the fact that he's gotten himself up to, I believe, around 5 assists a game this year, I think that has a little bit more of an offensive value than what Harden does, including with his playmaking. And when I say a little bit, I mean 2% of a difference. It's not that big of a difference. If I was going to compare Harden and Durant, I would say Durant's 2% better offensively and 20% better on defense. And you put the two of those together, and I think that's enough to make him better than Harden is overall. Now you get into Curry. Here's the thing. I think you could say that Curry has also had not the best time in the postseason, it's weird. I mean, the one game everybody forgets is the Game 7 against the Thunder, where he was just out of his world good. And like he significantly outplayed Westbrook. I feel like for whatever reason we forget about that. And I feel like history also makes it seem like he kind of sucked in his first finals where Iguodala won the finals MVP. Curry had himself quite a few really good games in that series. And I don't think Iguodala should have won finals MVP. But of course, he was not as good in the finals when they won the 73 games. Maybe it's because of injury, maybe not. I mean, a little bit of it was, definitely. I don't know. Harden versus Curry is tough. I do think Steph is also the better defender as opposed to Harden, because Steph is a really good team defender. And I would say isolation-wise, Curry's vulnerable, sure, but I would still say he's a better defender than Harden. That's a tough one. Harden is definitely having the better regular season, but if you made me really pick like which one I would rather have on my team, assuming that Steph Curry's ankles are not going to fall apart, I think I'd still rather have Curry because I think his offensive ceiling, just the gravity he has as a player, is just a little higher than James Harden is. And I don't want this to sound like I don't think James Harden is incredible, because he really is. And I think there's a chance that he could outplay Curry and Durant in the postseason. But if you force me to pick, I'm still going to go Curry, while also recognizing that James Harden is the MVP of this season, and he has been better than Steph Curry and Kevin Durant and LeBron James for, the last 60-something games, however many games we are into the season. So that would be my top four. LeBron, Durant, Curry, and Harden, with, like, not much of a difference between number 2 and 4, I guess. Number 5 is tricky. It should be said, Kawhi Leonard, I can't really put him here because he hasn't played all season, and I do have some fear that he might see a little bit of a drop-off after coming back from this really weird injury that it's just not going away at this point. So then we look at Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, and probably Yanis Antetokounmpo. Shout out to Damian Lillard and Kyrie Irving and Chris Paul. I mean, those guys have been great this season, but I think there's just a different level with some of these guys. I mean, if we start with Russell Westbrook, it is a drop-off from last year, because last season his efficiency was kind of insane given his usage rate, and also his performance in the clutch was also out of this world. And when I say efficiency, he's actually shooting a better field goal percentage this year as opposed to last year, but last year he was a significantly better three-point shooter, as he was nearly league average on 7 attempts a game, and he was also way better at the free throw line. He shot 85% at the line while also shooting 10 free throws a game as to his 7 free throws a game this season, where he's actually shooting the worst percentage of his career from there. So his shooting is just taking a decrease. Also, his turnover percentage has gone up, as well as his assist percentage has actually gone down. His rebounding percentage has gone down. He's just a worse player than last season. Now, is some of that because he's just trying to figure it out with Carmelo Anthony and Paul George? Yeah, of course. Like, OKC was a pretty awkward team to begin the year, and even now they haven't totally figured out the offense. It's gotten better as the year has progressed, sure, and I think last night, who were they playing last night? I don't remember who it was. They looked pretty comfortable last night, and Corey Brewer was going kind of nuts from outside. So it's getting better, but I can't act like the 69 games that Westbrook has played this year didn't happen, Now, on the flip side, Anthony Davis has been great, well, all season, of course, but he's really kicked it up another level the past month or so since DeMarcus Cousins was out. I mean, if I'm going to kill Westbrook for the beginning of the season not being beautiful, then I have to do the same thing to Anthony Davis, right? Because if Anthony Davis just maintained what he was while DeMarcus Cousins was there, then he'd probably be like number 6 or 7 here. But then the last couple of weeks are pushing him up to potentially number 5 for me. So, that's something to consider. And one thing with AD is he can't create his own offense the way that the other guys here can, because there is still a bit of an element of pick and rolls, offensive rebounds, dump off passes that come along with his offense, right? Whereas with everybody else here, they can just bring the ball up floor and they can just make something happen. So that's a couple of extra seconds off the shot clock that typically occur when Anthony Davis has the ball or when you want to run something for Anthony Davis. And, against most NBA players, this doesn't matter. Like, AD is still clearly better than, 90% of the NBA. But when you're trying to find little teeny things that can separate the elite of the elite, I think that's the kind of thing that can matter. And, of course, when we talk about his defense, AD is the best defender of all these guys because Kawhi Leonard is, in this weird other area for me. I don't know what to do with him. He hasn't played all season. He had a weird injury. But yeah, AD's the best defender as well. Now if we can get to Yanis. The lack of a jump shot is a real thing, and it does give the defense at least something of an avenue to defend him. And actually, Yanis has a really good bid for being as good defensively as Anthony Davis, because Yanis can defend almost any position. I do think when AD plays center especially, which unfortunately he doesn't do as much as you would maybe like to see, at least from a performance standpoint, I get why he wouldn't do it from a physicality standpoint. He's a thin guy, he might get hurt more. But just from a sheer, make the team better angle, he would be maximizing his talent at center. But anyway, I do think AD at power forward and center is maybe a little more valuable than Yanis, who does play power forward the majority of the time, but I do get the impression that AD is just a more intimidating rim protector and just overall paint defender than Yanis is, whereas Yanis is probably a little better at defending on the perimeter. So they both have a bid, but I would still pick Anthony Davis a little bit above him. The Bucks are pretty much a mess when Yanis is not in the game. He creates almost everything for them. His spin move is impossible to defend. I guess the only thing that would potentially hold him back besides that jump shot in this conversation is that we've seen everybody else do stuff in the postseason. And that's not totally fair because Giannis really hasn't had the opportunity, because he's just been on his natural progression as a player and he's finally entering the discussion this year, and I guess this would be his first real opportunity to show what he can do in the playoffs. It's pretty tough, man. I think ultimately I probably still have to go Westbrook number 5. Part of that being because of just how insane of a season he had last year was. And I know that the first round of the playoffs didn't go well, but they were kind of supposed to lose to a better Rockets team. A Rockets team that I thought wouldn't make the postseason, because I just love bringing that up. So, yeah. My brain is a mess after everything I just said. So the top 5 for me would be LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, James Harden, and then Westbrook, and then I guess you could kind of figure AD, Giannis, and then Kawhi is somewhere in there. I just don't know what to do with him because of this injury. And then if we were going to talk about number 9 and 10 real quick, I don't want to go too long because the video is already long enough. Damian Lillard is definitely in the top 10 this year for the carry job he's done with the Blazers. And then number 10, I don't know, you look at Kyrie Irving, you look at Paul George, Jimmy Butler. Maybe I'll just be a Celtics homer and go with Kyrie, number 10. I'll do that. Number 9 and 10 are Kyrie and Lillard. So there you go. There's the top, mainly the top 5, but I guess the top 10 by proxy. And I'm done.